we've seen cases where people have been chasing money in the absence of understanding what money represents to them. It's when we're chasing money at the cost of who we are that you realize at 50 years old, you've led a hollow life. I would say for every 10 students that come into this office that talk to me about a business idea, one of them moves forward. We do this exercise in my class. I'm giving a secret away.
Welcome back to the Thomas Wattia podcast, everybody. Today we have Dr. Matt Bazely, Director of Entrepreneurship at Huron University and successful businessman. Pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, Thomas. Great to be here. How do you demonstrate risk? Taking risk. How do you demonstrate that you're a person who's able to evaluate and manage through unusual circumstances? That studying abroad, that where you've leapt into the unknown, I think is really critical. It helps you in your storytelling. It helps to add texture to who you are. Not everybody does it, and there's a reason why, because you are embracing an unknown. I think these opportunities that students have now are so incredible because, first of all, they teach you about who you are because you're going into uncertain times and uncertain places. Mm-hmm. But also, they also teach you about what it is to be Canadian. I say this a lot to students. You have to leave Canada to understand what it is to be Canadian. Mm. So I came back from overseas, whether it be Japan or Australia, with a renewed sense of confidence. I was no longer fearful about being so career driven. I knew things would come my way if I worked hard, told my story, stuck with my values and my morals. And to me, that all stemmed from Japan. I put myself into an unusual circumstance, into a place that was I didn't know Japanese when I went. We just kind of made it up as we went along. That gave me confidence that is still paying off today. So to me, it's something that young people, if they do want to take that road, will see dividends throughout their entire life.
It's a huge boost in confidence.
It is. It teaches you about who you are. Mm-hmm. How do you manage ambiguity? How do you work in unknown spaces? What happens when you are the person who doesn't speak the dominant language? It's humbling.
Other than risk and empathy, especially in today's world with all the new changes with especially AI, what would you say are some traits that someone who wants to start a business needs to develop other than those?
What we have is we have our stories. We engage in explaining our stories in various ways. That's really the only differentiator we have. Mm-hmm. Information's a commodity, products are a commodity, services are a commodity. These are all easily replaceable. We had a guest speaker on campus last year who's been a very successful angel investor. Her name is Janet Bannister. And the one thing that I heard her say in a few different contexts and a few different ways was, when she invests into a business, she's investing in the person, not necessarily the business, not necessarily the idea. She's investing in the person. When we're awash in information, so that's no longer something that can be bought and sold. We are awash in products. If you're relying on that in your business, in the absence of ignoring your story and who you are, you're going to be disrupted.
Yeah.
So figure out your story, figure out what you bring to the table, and stick with that, and the business will follow.
And how do you figure out your story?
It's a journey. It's reflective. It's hard work.
Yeah.
I was just speaking to somebody actually the other day who's currently spending a few years overseas, but he was my student here, and we've stayed connected. We had a great WhatsApp call, and the one thing he was doing was he was like, okay, I got a plan. So I said, stop, don't plan, be and dream. So to answer your question, figure out the be for yourself. How do I want to be? Mm. And the second part is engage in some reading. Engage in something that is more philosophical, that allows you to enter that dream space of where do I want to play in this world? Engage in those conversations with yourself about what it is that you want out of life. Where do you want to play? Where do you want to lean in? Where do you want to make a difference? And from there, your story will emerge. There's been millennia of people who have thought about these things, who will push your thinking deeper. So I know, like, for example, Phil, the coach from the Chicago Bulls, who was very successful during the time of Michael Jordan, he was very much connected to Zen, for example. Others are connected to Arnie Mindell, for example. Others are impacted by books like The Greatest Salesman in the World, which is something I read while I was in high school. These are great books that allow you to ground who you are and who you want to be.
So we shouldn't be chasing the money. We should be chasing the career path.
Yeah, that's a great question. The money is the outcome of the effort. The
Okay.
money in and of itself is not the goal.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I feel like especially nowadays, that is the only goal that a lot of people have.
you realize how important money is when you talk to people who don't have money. But in and of itself is not a really pursuit.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a foolish pursuit.
well, yeah, it is. It's hollow, and we've seen cases where people have been chasing money in the absence of understanding what money represents to them. I think it's
It's a
like,
beautiful way to put it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like money. I my brother drives a beautiful Corvette. I think it's wonderful. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful car. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But we have to understand that it's only through our efforts and through our alignment with ourselves and through hard work and through reflection and all these things, money will flow as long as we have alignment.
Hmm.
But it's when we're out of a line that, either we're going to start chasing money at the cost of who we
Alignment
are,
with our vision.
align with our vision of our dream of who we want to be. It's when we're chasing money at the cost of who we are that you realize at 50 years old, you've led a hollow life. But when you think about wealth, there's lots of ways this can look.
Yeah.
Wealth can be measured in terms of like your career choice. Wealth can be measured in terms of how rich your family life is. Wealth can be measured in terms of your health. I'm 56 years old, and my body has started telling me I'm 56 years old. And so when you think about that, like youthfulness and health are forms of wealth. Flexibility, career opportunity are forms of wealth. Being aligned with who you are and feeling that sense of fulfillment with who you are in your life, those are signs of wealth. I'm blessed to have a great marriage and wonderful children. These are all wealths. They help me lead a fulfilled life.
And that's what success truly means, is to have a loving family
Well,
and
for me it is.
yeah.
But I'm not here to tell people. I don't want to be so prescriptive, saying you have to have that in order to have that.
Uh-huh.
That is not it. I think that's where that dreaming comes into it.
So it could be different for each person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how arrogant would it be for me saying I've sorted out and everybody else follows along? That would be coming from arrogance.
You mentioned that reading is a crucial part to find this. Other than The Greatest Salesman, what books would you recommend to get into this more dreamer like state?
I've read so many books along the way. The Art of Possibility. I've read a book called Taming Your Gremlin, which is a book that helps you understand what's holding you back. There's I believe it's called 4,000 Hours. Things like Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. These are all things that are either like books that are instructional in terms of how to get to a higher order, or also to be able to get into that dream state. The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle, I believe it's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I think it's called.
Hmm.
Book I read years ago, talking about the beauty in the mundane, right? And the
Yeah.
beauty of that kind of world. So yeah, it's got to work for each different person. Some people might be more Aristotle, and some people might be more Chatelaine, right? It
Yeah.
just depends on where you're at. Right?
Is there any one specific book that was a game changer for you, or would you say it's a constant journey of reading them?
I think over the years, right? Different. The readings got a little more complex and nuanced. But when I was very young, I was reading The Greatest Salesman in the World, which is Og Mandino, which was fantastic. I read The Four Agreements, which was a great book in terms of getting out of your way and working better with others. I read The Art of Possibility, I think 22 years ago. It's still in
Mhm.
print, but I read that, and I actually just reread that because I was giving a talk to some young students, and I wanted to kind of revisit those things. So I've read you know um, I'm just trying to think now. Is
Have you
that in
read
regards to the maintenance?
Think and Grow Rich?
No, I don't tend to. I find that to be a bit of bait and switch kind of book. I'm careful not to. Um, Books that promise growing rich, which to me are a little bit prescriptive. So I tend to be not so connected to that. There was a book that I read when in high school, for example, called The Catcher in the Rye, by J.D. Salinger, that was instrumental to how I understand the world. And it wasn't kind of a self help book. It wasn't like that. It was more along the lines of a story of a very sad
Reckless,
person,
yeah. Yeah.
and how, and I still sticks with me today of how sad he was and how angry he was with the world and how counterproductive anger was, and that sticks with me today, even again 40 something years later. Highly recommend the book, by the way.
There's always stuff to learn, even when it's not a good scenario. Because in that book, he was sad, he was
Yeah.
angry,
Well, when you read
bad
a book like The
decisions.
Greatest Sales, I'm sorry, when you read a book called not The Greatest Salesman, uh, the name is just on mine, but even plays I've seen, around the idea of like the disappointed American dream because it's hollow, in the way of money, pursuit of money.
Hmm.
There's wonderful plays out there, and I'm my name I'm drawing a blank as to uh, what the play is. It's quite seminal, but I anyway. The point is these books, is this literature at times, they can be self-help books, they can be books that are kind of more prescriptive, like what I think you're describing. I think, sure, whatever floats your boat, but be careful of books that promise you something.
Hmm.
The journey can't be prescribed from a book, in my mind.
So it should be more of a journey. It shouldn't say, once you complete this book, you'll have X amount of dollars, or you'll have this. It shouldn't be like that.
Look, if somebody cracked the code and figured that out, um
Everyone
well,
should read that book.
everyone should read that book. I think this is a little more nuanced, and
Yeah.
I think while it's attractive to think in those ways, and because it looks like it's like, if you follow this like a recipe, this will happen,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but again, this is a very personal thing that we're talking about here.
And you mentioned earlier how the coach of Michael Jordan, how he was
Phil Jackson. That's it. Just
Phil
name it.
Jackson.
Yeah, yeah.
He was so successful because he achieved this Zen state. Did faith have any influence on becoming to your successful position that you are at now?
For me,
Yeah.
oh, so I grew up Catholic. I'm still informed by my Catholicity. It shapes a lot of my morality and how I understand the world.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, I think religion gives you a way to interpret the world. Like, there's we need to understand the world. We need to lens it through. I mean, we're looking at the world through a lens in some sort of way. In my case, it was Catholic. I grew up Catholic. My father was a deacon. My mother was an acolyte,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that kind of played a world. I mean, I am struck by the concept of forgiveness, and I'm
Yes.
struck by the concept of servants being in the service of others. I mean, those are two fundamental concepts within the Catholic Church. While I don't necessarily want to get caught up in the dogma of the Catholic Church, and I don't necessarily want to get, I don't think this is a conversation
Hmm.
about the scandals within the Catholic Church. I want to pull from the things that really kind of how they shape me, and I don't think there's so much a part of me, those two facets. I don't think I could say for sure, like, I'm not using those today. Those are still fundamental ways I understand the world, of, again, the concept of religion, or the concept of forgiveness, and the concept of being in the service of others.
Hmm.
These are things that were taught to me right from the get-go.
So the lessons were important, but I'm wondering, like, faith in itself,
Yeah,
as in truly believing with your heart that this will happen, or
yeah,
believing in, let's say, God, for example.
yeah,
Other than the lessons, did, like, faith that there is light at the end of the
yeah,
tunnel
yeah.
help you at all?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So I remember being in grad school, and I had to write a paper on a journey. It was a phenomenological paper where you had to kind of think about your experience, and I gave my parents no reason to think that I'd be successful. I was a hard worker, but academically I was not really inclined. I just
And now
it
you're a
was,
professor.
and now I'm a professor. But so my journey has not been one where it's like, okay, this kid's super bright. There was like a question of like, yeah, he's a nice kid. He'd probably be good in sales and all that kind of good stuff. So I never really gave my parents a reason to believe. And then I remember in grade 11, my teacher, Mrs. Anderson, told my mom in a parent-teacher interview. I was in the room with her, and she said, I should be going to like a trade school, to an applied school. And my mother looked at me and said, well, what do you think, son? And I said, no, I think I can do this. And she looked at Mrs. Anderson and said, he's going to do this. And my mother always premised her actions on faith, and it wasn't blind faith. It wasn't a faith in. Or sorry, it wasn't a silly kind of faith of like, she believed in her heart that it will be okay. And this is despite evidence to the contrary.
Yeah.
Now, in today's world, with helicopter parenting, and I would have been, there would have been all kinds of interventions. My mom believed I would find my way through, and I that sticks with me today. That sticks with me up to today because I did. I did
Hmm.
find my way through, and I found I got to a higher ground, and I think I've been okay. But so my faith is not easy.
Yeah. And
Faith
I
is
believe you mentioned also in a prior conversation that you were with your wife, and I forgot what it was, but you wanted to jump into a new business or something, and then she instantly said
yes,
yes.
yeah. So my mom and my wife have both exhibited faith in me. At times when it's high stakes, at times when there's evidence to the contrary,
Yeah.
but they also had faith, fundamental faith. And so faith is never a question of like, everything's pointing to yes, I have faith in you. That's not faith. That's something different. Faith is when there's evidence to the contrary, when you're challenged by this, and you still choose to believe.
And you still believe.
Yes, you still choose to believe. And so both cases, my mother and my wife um, chose to believe and chose to have faith. So it's a choice.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is absolutely a beautiful thing, and I'll never forget that those conversations.
And what would you say was the most pivotal point in your life where you said, okay, this is what I want to do? Or because, for example, when I'm looking and researching other podcasts like this where they also interview successful guests, a common trait I found is that there's always some sort of, so if you were to look at life as a trajectory of, say, just a steady steep up, in all the super successful people, there's always a sudden like plummet. Was there ever a really hard situation in your
Yep.
life that you learned a lot from, and that was a big game changer?
Yeah. When I was running my own business, my wife was on a teaching contract, didn't have a lot of money. We had a mortgage, we had young children, daycare costs, and again, going back to that wealth thing, money's important when you don't have it.
Yeah.
And my brother was getting married, and I was in the wedding party, and we had an old VW Bug. I was, just kind of launching this business. Income was not great; it was irregular. Um, we had to buy a suit, a shirt and a tie, and so that took all our money. And I had to go shop for black shoes at used shoe shops. I did not have the money for
Hmm.
new shoes. Um, yeah, that was a moment. And because we had hotel costs and travel costs and all that kind of stuff, that was a moment in time when it's like again, my wife stood by me. I was a licensed teacher. I could have gone back to teaching. We could have taken a different path, but my wife still believed that I was going to be okay. So yeah, that was a moment in humility, absolute humility. Of like, we had to persevere, and we did, and we got to higher ground. But it was moments where like we are paycheck to paycheck, and we are just making it. And um, I again, this is goes back to that lesson I learned of like it is naive and to some extent dangerous to tell people that money's not important. It, it that to me comes from a place of privilege and a bit like, okay, but money is important. When you don't have it, it is extraordinarily important. So again, it goes back to the that empathy for others who are chasing that money because they need it. And so you can't vilify money. You can't. That's incorrect. That'd be wrong. And you can't vilify others for chasing money. I was that was a profound moment in my of lesson of like, this is hard. Life is hard right now, but we persevered and we were able to get through it, and things went from there. But that was a very strong lesson in humility.
So the realization was humility, that essentially there's there's a lot to work on. Like, I really need to figure this out.
Um, well, I had to figure it out. What choice did I have?
Yeah.
I had two young children. I had
Yeah.
a mortgage to pay. What choice? I mean, again, it goes back to that faith of like, I will figure this out. Don't know what that looks like yet. But I had,
But you still
because of
believe, yeah.
the faith that my mother placed in me, was a source of strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't fall on my knees and do some sort of like Hollywood-esque kind of moment. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was like a quiet grind. It was a quiet grind, and I did see my way through it.
Yeah.
But I never once did I think I can't do this. It was a question of like, how do I do this? I think you start off with a premise that you have something to offer. You have something unique to offer in this world, and um, it's not about I'm a really cheerful person, or you have something of meaning and of value to offer the world. So let's make that assumption. That's the art of possibility, by the way. That comes from that book of like, you have something to offer.
Mm-hmm. That's step one.
That's step one. Um, and so when you come from a place of strength, and when I say place of strength, I don't mean arrogance. I mean something that you have a self-assuredness in. And believe each of us have something to offer this world in some way. And it's not the same for everybody. Um, it could be a variety of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So start with that. And then from there, do the hard work. Do the hard work. This is not easy work. Do the hard work of getting out of your own way. Figure out what's holding you back, whatever that is. I mean, and it's not about you're broken or that. It's just about how do we process the ghosts that live within us,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever that may be. You have a responsibility to yourself. If you have awareness of something that is either holding you back, or something that you unrealized dream, or a goal that you really are you feel like is really important to your life,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have a responsibility to yourself to pursue that. And or else that you'll be sitting, in your elderly years and saying, I should have, would have, could have. And, that's sad. That's sad. I mean, if you have awareness, there's all kinds of ways you can pursue it.
What would you think today is the most common thing holding someone back?
I'm a big believer in Jungian psychology, where we have like these self-limiting beliefs of not belonging. Where do I belong? Who are my people? Where do I belong in this world?
For students who want to pursue entrepreneurial dreams right now,
Yeah.
and are in school, as a businessman yourself, and also in the school system as a professor, how would you recommend to allocate their time with the studies versus the pursuing the dream?
That's such a great question. Some of the most interesting students I have are not necessarily pursuing the 90s in the class. They say, I am here to fit my own goals. And it doesn't mean that they're ignoring the courses or not doing the work. That's not what I mean. But they have defined what they want to get out of the course. In other words, I'm not the one defining their sense of self-worth. These students I find are so interesting and
Mm-hmm.
so really cool, because they're not chasing a mark, they're not chasing a grade, they're chasing knowledge, but they've also defined what it is that they want out of the course. Those are very effective students. So I'd say that, first of all, define what you want out of the course. Do not let the professor define that for you. Grades are, again, it's like money. They are an outcome of effort, but you should define on what you want. For some people, A successful class is getting a 60 because they learned X, Y, and Z, and that was key to them. For other people, that's 95 because they want to pursue graduate school. It depends on the person, but do not let the school system, the university, the professor define on what you want out of the class. So that's one thing. Second of all is be bold and experiment.
Hmm.
Don't this is a great playground. This is a great place to try different things. I mean, this is why we have clubs. This is why we have different areas. To me, there's never a better time than this. Experiment, be bold. I'll give you an example. I have a student right now in one of my classes he runs a business in the summer. He is spending the next week, which is an academic week. It's not, there's no holiday, out in his hometown quoting for jobs for the summer. To me, he's making a choice not to be here in order for him to run a successful business in the summertime. He's taken the hit on the participation grades. There's just no, like, that's just part of the class agreement. But also he spoke with me and I was able to reorganize an assignment so that he can get it done the week after. Because I see value in that student pursuing this. This is important work. He's making a living. He's learning more about business. So kind of enroll others in your vision, right?
Hmm.
This is in the case of the student, he's able to bounce off. He's also willing to take the hit
Yeah.
because the participation grade doesn't define who he is. A successful business over the summer is more definitive of who he is.
So from all these examples, what I'm gathering is there's always an element of risk.
Yeah, well, there's always an element of managed risk,
Yeah.
of like, and cost benefit analysis, if we're going to use a business term, but do that analysis carefully. Nothing is sadder to me than seeing a student who wants to be defined by their grade, only by their grades, and defined only by what they think the professor thinks of them. That to me is a recipe for a, it's not as enriching as it could be. It's not as enriching as it could be because I like the students who are able to say, well, I have dual goals here or different goals, and so I'm okay with having the hit sometimes and understanding that there's a tension here. That's life, right?
Yeah. So you really need to be conscious that that is what I want to do because there are. Uh,
I never tell people they need to do anything.
oh.
But what I would suggest is enroll others in your vision. That's a big part of it, and this comes into some of the leadership books that we've been discussing, and I've come across over the years of enroll others in your vision. Explain your goal to others.
Hmm.
This is each student presents with a different set of circumstances here, and if the university can't embody and capitalize on students' personal drives, if they can't have the empathy to help students see their way through to a higher ground, we're in the wrong business. Demand more of the university. Demand that they see you as an individual that is willing to work with you in pursuing whatever it is that goal that you're trying to pursue. Getting the degree is incredibly important. That's the primary reason we're here and getting that education. But there's also an opportunity for us to kind of lean in and learn, in this case here, learn more about business in a very applied way. Why can't we? Why can't we as a university accommodate both that tension?
Yeah, it's fascinating because to realize that the university isn't just this schoolwork, it's so much more than that. It's helping you fuel uh like the dream that you want to achieve.
Yes, and don't leave it to your professor to define that dream.
If you're enjoying this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It truly helps out what I'm trying to build here. At 1,000 subscribers, I have a huge announcement. Should students be morally concerned when they create a business? For example, creating a video game business when they know that can be a distraction or.
Well, I would say yes, they need to be concerned, but maybe not for the reasons some might think. Um, when you are doing something that's righteous and something that is ethical, um, you have a much better chance of being sustainable. Uh, the world finds out the carpetbaggers and the ones who are acting unethically pretty fast.
Hmm.
So it is, sure, go ahead and try to start a business where you're shortcutting on ethics or values, but I'm not sure you're going to be in business very long. Particularly when you're starting. Um, when you look at a lot of the literature on why people engage with entrepreneurs, and when I'm not talking about large corporations, that's the different story. They are oftentimes buying the person as much
Yeah.
as and the vision of the person as much as they're buying the product. So for entrepreneurs in particular, you are really part of the overall package. You are who you are matters. Now, I want to be careful though that businesses can be framed in all kinds of ways. You talk about a digital game. Well, there's a lot of people who find enjoyment in digital gaming. It's when it gets excessive that it gets to be a problem, and or when it becomes addictive, that becomes a problem. But the video game itself is not
Hmm.
unethically, is not challenged ethically.
It's how it's used.
Yeah, it's how it's used. And so, we can, you know, for anybody who's thinking about starting a business, yeah, think about what you're doing. But most businesses, you'd be hard pressed to say to kind of label them as bad.
Hmm.
That would be I think there's lots of ways of looking at um, a business and finding how it is having a positive impact.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. In Canada, we have the oil patch, and that is seen as a negative from an ecological and environmental um, piece. But with the rise of Trump and Canada's sustainability and viability as a standalone economy, is now oil is being kind of reframed.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it still ecologically better, it doesn't. But we have to. Roger Martin wrote a book called The Opposable Mind, where you hold different ideas that are in tension with each other in your mind, and that's a sign that that's it's hard to do. Saying, well, yes, oil's bad, but the sustainability of Canada as a nation, our sovereignty is also important. So how do we kind of measure those two out? And so it's a constant calibration, recalibration around what's good, what's bad. I would hate to use any kind of trope or any kind of label that says this is bad, this is good. It's rarely that way. It's
Hmm.
rarely that way. What we know about the literature is that people with formal education have the same kind of success rates as people without education in terms of starting a business. Which begs the question of why do we have entrepreneurial education? And to begin with, well, what we do know is that people with formal education tend to scale faster and easier than those who without it, because you can think more abstractly, or you've been trained to think more abstractly. You're able to kind of generalize a little bit better, and those are the kind of the what you need to scale.
Hmm.
Where entrepreneurs get in trouble is when they're, and I'm going to use a term called, they're working at the end of the tools, which is a construction term, like you are on a tool, and so they're working in their business a lot and they're not paying attention to working on their business. There's a great business consulting firm out of British Columbia called Breakthrough Academy, and they work with mid-sized construction companies. We're talking, $2 to $6 million revenue, and they're one of their biggest things when they're doing their business coaching is getting the entrepreneur, getting the business owner to think about their sales funnel and to think about their SOPs, their standard operating procedures. Those are two ways that you scale. So you have to eventually get out of whether you're digging a ditch or whether you're framing a house or whatever that may be, and get working on the more abstract business development pieces of it.
Hmm.
So entrepreneurs need to be prepared to make that shift in order for them to be able to be sustainable. Or else, if you don't, you'll be on the end of the tools in 20 years from now. Who would have thought 6 years ago, that our best friend to the south is now the fox in the henhouse, right? And he's attacking small business and large businesses alike in Canada. To the point, and so you better be adaptable. You better be adaptable. Clayton Christensen out of the Harvard, and he's since passed away, but one of his books he talks a lot about, if you think the technology is your product, you will be disrupted. If you think your product is a product, you will be disrupted. You have to be able to have something more than just selling a piece of hardware or a piece of something, computer, whatever else, and you have to be something more than just um, a service. There has to be something bigger in there for you. Warren Buffett talks about this in terms of this like a moat. What is a moat to your business to avoid you getting disrupted? There has to be some sort of value add to what you're doing. You know, selling kitchen hardware or kitchen tools or whatever else is fine, but there has to be something more, or else Amazon will come after you. Selling a software system is great until Microsoft decides that they're going to just embed it into their Windows operating system for free. So anybody who thinks that their hardware, their software, their technology is their business, it's not. It's not. There has to be something more. You have to have a way of protecting your business. And again, as Warren Buffett says, by using a moat, and that moat is oftentimes, your service model, your way that you interact with clients, the way that you are unique, that cannot be replicable. That to me is a way to protect your business, not relying solely on whatever it is that you're selling.
And also, the brand is something to distinguish yourself as well.
I think the brand is an expression of what it is that makes you unique. It's not the brand, the brand statement. It makes sense, but like what is it? Is it if it's extraordinary service? Great, that could be your brand. Yes, I think the brand kind of encapsulates that kind of idea, that kind of thinking, that is a unique identifier. It's an expression of that.
So how would you say, if this is the tool to be able to survive past the disruption and adapt, how does one build a brand like truly unique then? That, as you said, is really just an expression of something that you're doing that can't be replicated.
Yeah.
How do you discover what that is and then express that as the brand?
Well, I think some would explain it. These are not my words, but some would explain it as being client centricity. That's a well-known kind of concept of like, you're absolutely, and this is how Jeff Bezos is, that was his success. He was absolutely going to be completely 100% dedicated to client centricity. So everything begins and ends with how will this impact the client, with Amazon, for example. So client centricity is one thing. Don't think you can outsmart the market.
Yeah.
The other piece, I think, Thomas, is people think and this is adjacent to your thinking. People think, I hear a lot of students talk about being cheaper, better, higher, all this kind of stuff. Like, we're going to be better, we're going to be cheaper. You can't. Those two are in tension with each other.
Yeah.
Look at whatever you're doing from a value. How are you adding value? How are you adding value? And that can look in an infinite number of ways. I think if you're always focused on maximizing the value for your client in whatever which way that may be, you're going to be just fine. Because that becomes that kind of thinking, that focus will provide you with a moat that is not so easily replicable. It doesn't mean you're not going to lose clients. It doesn't mean that clients are, you have some clients out there that are absolutely dedicated to find the lowest price. And if you're not playing in that space, don't play in it. If you are a high value kind of premium service, don't think you have to get into a price game with whoever that is, because there's always going to be low price competitors out there, and you might be one of them.
Yeah.
But if your value, if your brand, if your mode is all about providing value, don't try to compete. It won't work. It won't work. You don't think that you can be cheaper, better, higher quality. You can't. Pick a lane and prioritize that. You can't be everything to everybody. It's impossible. You'll end up losing money.
Yeah, so just stick to providing value and clients first, maximizing the value for them.
Yeah, and I don't think it's I want to be careful not to be dogmatic about it.
Okay.
Where you are simply picking a lane and come, that's the only way you're going to go. No, that's not what I mean. But have a lane, be in that lane, and then you may choose to move lanes, or you may choose, but make it a conscious decision. There's certain things that you can do well that others can't, and stick with those. But at some point, you may choose to, if you, as you grow, you may choose to add another line. Let's say, we see this in the grocery chain. You have Loblaw or Farm Boy, which are considered to be more higher end shopping experience, but you also have the no frills and the food basics, which are more value conscious. So maybe there's a ways to, if you, as you grow your business, there are ways to diversify. Um, but it's a conscious, it's a different business line,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily trying to have one business line that meets everybody's needs.
Mm-hmm. And once you have, let's say, everything's covered, you know exactly what it is you want to do, how would you go about finding a business partner? Or would
Well,
it
you're
be,
assuming you need a business partner, is that what you're
if you
thinking?
were to want a business partner,
Yeah.
how would you recommend that?
Yeah. I would argue that most business partners are successful and or unsuccessful based on values. You have to have consistent, you have to share the values. Going back to this idea around your moat or your value proposition, if you are really focused on providing a premium service at a premium cost, and your business partner comes in thinking that they want to find a way to garner market share regardless and be a low cost producer, those two, you're going to end up fighting all the time about how the business can operate.
Yeah.
um, you may choose to have a business, but not grow to the point where you're working 7 days a week. Somebody may be driven in a different direction. Those are critical conversations that you have to have. I've seen it. I've seen it in various cases where partners or have been brought on, and it's not gone well. Because one has a growth trajectory that is so critically different than somebody who has I like what I got. We're stable, and it's provided me with a life that I want. So you have to have that conversation before you launch, um, because once you launch, it's too late. You can't course correct this a lot of the
You're
times.
in it.
Once you're in it, because now there's money at play. There's ownership at play. There's legal matters to contend with. So be really, really, really picky and careful with who you're going to choose to partner with. And if you're not aligned, it's a not yet thing. It may not be a no, but it's a not yet thing. I think invest the money in an executive coach to work with the two partners to make sure that there's alignment. You can't, oftentimes people are blinded by their own enthusiasm, they're blinded by their own thinking, and they really, really want this. But that can cause a lot of heartache down the path, down the road. So I would argue that if you can have somebody who's going to come in as a third party who's going to walk you through a few exercises within which to kind of understand your values, your goals, what you see as important and your priorities, versus your potential partner. And if there's a mismatch, don't do it. At least don't do it at that time.
Yeah.
Despite you guys went to university together or whatever that may be, just because if without that alignment, you are really going to have a lot of heartache.
Could you give any advice to students who want to start a company, or pursue a dream or whatever that is, but they still don't have any clear understanding of their values or their skills? All they know is they want to do something, but they have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Well, rely on the Chinese proverb of the journey of 10,000 miles starts with the first step. I think that works. I can't remember exact words of it. Point is to start. Start. This is don't sit there and work within your own mind and sit there and be, you by yourself with your thoughts here. Start. Some people believe in manifestation. That might be, you can frame it that way. You start talking about it, you're manifesting something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they want to start their own business. They want to they want to have something of their own. That's it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It may not be, they want to have something of their own that they've kind of shaped and curated and brought to fruition. Start talking to people. The fact that you don't have business idea, is a great place to start, because you have the awareness of, I don't have a business idea, or I have a business idea, but I'm not sure really where this fits. I don't know if I'm solving a problem or or is this just a me thing? That's a great place to start. These are great. Knowing that you don't know is a terrific place to start. You do not have to have a fully baked idea before you start talking to others about it.
Hmm.
There are so many great tools, frameworks, methodologies, books, resources that can meet you where you're at in that journey. If you have, if that's something that you really want to move forward, but you don't even have an idea yet, there, there's methodologies for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an idea, but you don't know if it's an idea that people are willing to do anything about, great. There's methodologies for that. The fact that you're starting the journey doesn't mean you know the end either. Like, you don't know how this is going to end up. I don't think Jeff Bezos, when he started sorting library books in his garage, realized he would have the biggest online retailer in the world, and he'd be one of the richest men in the world. I don't think. I mean, clearly the guy's a brilliant guy who has had a vision, but I'm not sure he would have even guessed as to where he ended up. Right. So assume that you're on a journey. Assume that, and we teach this in the entrepreneurship classes. It's called the pilot and the plane principle, where you're piloting the plane, but you may not necessarily know the destination. Have that kind of self-assuredness that you'll sort it out. You'll
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. There's no question. But don't be so connected to getting to that island airport. It may be a different island.
It doesn't matter what you don't know. There's always a resource out there that could help you.
Well, the fact that you don't know is an insight.
Uh-huh.
Is an insight. And it's a great place to start. It's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Because now the sky's the limit, right?
What if you don't have any capital to start anything?
A lot of businesses don't have capital. We did this exercise in my class. I'm giving a secret away because I don't tell the students that this is happening, where I give each student $5, right? I give them $5 and say, you have 72 hours to raise money. Now, I've seen people raise over $2,000. I've seen people lose the $5. I've seen people, but learned a lot. I've seen people raise $400, right? I've seen the whole gamut of things because we did this exercise for each class. The $5 is irrelevant. Everybody has $5 they can find in their seat cushions or in their car or whatever else. The $5 is irrelevant, but it's a metaphor for, okay, here's something we can work with. Capital is really not the place to start. Capital investment is not the place to start. And in fact, if you have too much capital investment, it can have the impact of lazy thinking because you're not really kind of working through the priorities of the business. That lack of resources creates a level of inventiveness, an opportunity for creativity that you might not otherwise have.
Yeah, Einstein said necessity is the mother of invention.
Those are great words to live by, right? And so there's lots of theory in entrepreneurship, and a lot of research in entrepreneurship that talks about, like, it's whether it be bricolage, effectuation, that bootstrapping, where that the capital investment should not, it can kind of subvert a good idea if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm. Would it be a good idea to start with a capital investment as a safety net for the beginning, or would it be better to simply jump in first and then discover?
If you're waiting for capital investment at the very beginning, we're going to have the same conversation in 10 years and you would not have moved your idea forward.
Interesting.
If you're waiting a capital investment to move an idea forward, you're waiting. You may as well find a job, because it's antithetical to entrepreneurship. Start.
How is that antithetical? It's interesting.
Because you're waiting.
Interesting.
You're waiting. Entrepreneurship is by definition is a doing.
Yes.
Doing. There's a sense of urgency. There's a bias towards action in entrepreneurship that if you don't do it, if you don't start, even in the absence of capital, you're going to be waiting for a good long time. That to me oftentimes is a sign of nervousness or a sign of hesitancy. You're testing the waters. You might be kicking the tires, which is fine. People get very excited about the idea of a business, starting a business, having an idea, and what happens. And you see this time and time again. People are very excited about the business. or the idea of the business, the minute it gets into the business is when interest wanes. I would say for every 10 students that come into this office that talk to me about a business idea, one of them moves forward. The other 9 are like, that was a nice thought experiment.
And what separates it, the one that moves forward from the others?
Grit, grit. Moving forward and moving into uncharted territory and understanding that this is not there's no panacea, there's no one formula to go. It is getting out and getting into it. And that's important. So it's the grit. It's hard. So people, and again, I've coached a lot of students, and I have a lot of first conversations that rarely have a second conversation because it's hard. It's hard. Well, you're an entrepreneur yourself. You've had to come here. You have to set up. You have to spend your reading week doing these podcasts. This is not easy work at times.
Mm-hmm. So just essentially just getting to it, just starting.
Yeah. I want to be careful not to vilify those who have an idea and want to talk about it. I think that's really important. I mean, that's what we're here for at the university, right? But 10%, I mean, it's not Einstein that said this, but 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Yeah. Same thing, right? Of like the idea is 10% of the overall project. 90% is the execution. There's a book I just read called Making Ideas Happen, which talks about this idea of like the innovation that you see oftentimes comes when you're executing. This is not a sitting in my basement kind of having a really kind of dreamy conversation with my buddies. That's rarely where it happens, right? It's the innovation occurs in the execution stage.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious as well, what would you say to someone who maybe they're still in university now, or they've just graduated? What advice would you have for someone who takes that leap of faith?
Yeah. One is, hey, congratulations. Awesome. Don't assume you're not going to the end product. Don't assume that that you have it all figured out. It's a wild ride and strap in. But it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's not an all or nothing thing. A lot of people are doing it. They hedge their bets. They hedge, and I think that's important, especially if you're young and you're trying to make a goal of it and get your money together for a down payment for a house and all that kind of stuff. Hey, I empathize again. Goes back to my dress shoes thing. I empathize because it's a path of not taken by all, but there's lots of ways. Assume that you can do it, and assume that it's not an all-in kind of thing. It is a I run a small little consulting business on the side.
Yeah.
I'm not reliant on the income from it, but it helps keep me sharp as a practitioner.
Yeah.
Right. So you can have a business that will help you kind of move toward your dream, but there's so many ways that can happen. If you want to go all in and dedicate yourself, great. We talk a lot about in a third year class about pass-fail hurdles. And a pass-fail hurdle is have a hypothesis and then determine what are the success rates of your hypothesis. Like I'm going to do, for example, I'm going to commit myself 100% to this for 1 year, really authentically commit to it for 1 year and see where I'm at in the year and then decide where I'm going to go. All of a sudden now the pressure's off. You're not assuming I have to be successful. You're not assuming that, if this doesn't, if this is not successful, this
Life's
is a
over.
failure.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it all for 1 year, and at the end of that year, I'm going to take a moment to take stock and see where I'm at. Or I'm going to invest my $8,000, and I'm going to determine if I haven't kind of achieved XYZ sales in 6 months, I'm going to take stock. Then you've given yourself the room to go hard, to try, to work, but also this is not, you're not married to this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So come up with a hypothesis, come up with some way of measuring the hypothesis, a pass-fail hurdle, and then stick to it. And then in a year, if you say, it was successful, but I'm morphing into this, or gee, that didn't really get me to where I want to go, I'm going to go in a different direction. You've given yourself permission. And then all of a sudden, it's not a failure. It is I tried something. My hypothesis was this. I have to change my hypothesis.
Yeah.
As opposed to putting sort of moralness toward it, or putting some sort of additional meaning that you start shaming yourself. Really, it doesn't serve.
So you shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself when you're taking this 1 year to go all in. It's a
Lower the
testing.
temperature. Lower
Yeah.
the temperature. Think of life as a series of projects,
Interesting.
as opposed to something that has to mount something, and at 65 you get the golden watch and away you go and off into the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of life as a series of projects, a series of hypotheses, where you're going to try things, and some will work, some won't work, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Move on. I mean, in entrepreneurship, there's a principle called the corridor principle.
Yeah.
And where that is like, even for people who had failed businesses, they oftentimes start new businesses because they've learned something along the way. They've been able to kind of capitalize on that opportunity, that experience, and from there they've been able to now go into a successful business. So when you hear, that stat about a lot of businesses fail in their first 5 years and all kinds of stuff, yep, that's very true. But that story doesn't end there.
Yeah.
The story continues on. Many of those people have, they've learned and earned some critical knowledge, and now they're on to something different, bigger, better, whatever that may look like.
And when you're taking this, let's say 1 year to go all in, and let's say, for example, I'm very fortunate now to have a very supportive family. So if I'm taking, let's say, 1 year to go all in rather than studying, would it be better to then, how can I say this, to like put it all on myself? So because I'm taking like 1 year to pursue this dream, then I'm responsible for rent and I'm responsible for food and all of that? Or would you say, if you have that opportunity to have that, safe haven or extra capital, what would you think would be better for someone who wants to take that 1 year? Would it be better for them to fund it all themselves, and like, I need to use my own money or like the own earnings to live for this year, or or get support from people who can support you?
All right, well, let's always assume that you're not a lone wolf.
Yeah.
Every entrepreneur has had support along the way. That's the principles of effectuation, where and resource-based theory, which is, you are going to look around and you're going to take inventory of what's available to me, and you're going to exploit that in order for you to move forward. And when I say exploit, I don't mean in a negative way. Whether it be you get to live rent-free under your parents' roof, whether you have access to a vehicle, whether you can use rent equipment, or whatever that may be, you're going to do that in order for you to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
To assume that you need to have it all is just an unrealistic kind of expectation. So use everything at your disposal in the best possible way
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to move forward with your ideas and dreams. From there, you might have to you build up your resources along the way. You may be even able to lend out your resources to others or whatever it be, but you build up yourself along the way, and then you're able to do it. But the myth of entrepreneurship is this kind of lone wolf who's out there making themselves. That is just patently not true. Every entrepreneur has had support along the way. And I would say people really want to engage and support entrepreneurs in some way, oftentimes.
So don't voluntarily become a lone wolf because you have all the support.
I would say that's counterproductive.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably one reason for failure.
Interesting.
The lone wolf idea: be single-minded, be self-assured in your own ideas, but also enroll, and as we mentioned earlier on, enroll others in your vision. Enroll others in your vision. None of this happens without support from your community, your tribe, your whatever that may be, your faith, whatever that may be.
And you mentioned enroll others in your vision. Is that simply validation that it's good, or investment?
Both, yes, and it could be a critical conversation where you have somebody who's willing to work to engage in truthful conversation that's constructive.
Hmm.
It could be somebody who's willing to support you in some sort of resource way or in some sort of way, whether through an introduction, access to network, resources. The list is endless, right?
Yeah.
You need all the above. You need all the above. None of us get to do this alone, and in fact, it's a blessing that we get to lean in and allow others to contribute to our success.
Hmm.
People like to help. People like to be asked for help. It's not an imposition.
Before we end off, is there anything else you would like to add or something that I should have asked you?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. This has been a wonderful conversation. You don't get to do this very often of just having this free flowing conversation and talk about some of the deeper, more meaningful ways in life. And it certainly doesn't happen through text and email. So I really do appreciate the effort that you're doing. I want to wish you well. I want to wish you well. And this is a really interesting journey that you're on. And you however this lands up for you, this has been a really wonderful experience. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And how I end each podcast episode is it's a tradition.
Yeah.
Is I ask the guest in one word to say their greatest philosophical take that they want the world to know, and they want someone who's, because it takes a lot of effort to watch a full length episode like this, especially with the short attention spans. But that's a different topic. So, in one word, what would you want the world to know, and what would you want the people to walk away with from this episode?
Start.